One of the stories recounted in this week's Torah portion is of 5 women, the daughters of a certain deceased Israelite named Zelophehad, who approached Moses with a request. These 5 women did. And the text reads, "The daughters of Zelophehad of Manassite family, son of Hefer, son of Gilad, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, son of Joseph, came forward. The names of the daughters were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They stood before Moses, Eleazar the priest, the chieftains, and the whole assembly at the entrance of a tent of meeting, and they said, 'Our father died in the wilderness. He was not one of Korach's faction, which banded together against God. He died of his own sin, and he has left no sons. Let not our father's name be lost to his clan just because he had no sons. Give us a holding among our father's kinsmen.' And Moses brought their case before God." God's response to Moses is filled with enthusiasm and certainty, and even, maybe, a little surprise. These individuals have brought before God something unexpected, off book. They've called an audible. God says, these women's plea is just. Cain, yes, this is right. You should give them a hereditary holding among their father's kinsmen. Transfer their father's share to them. This is God's answer. The moment is often remembered in the Torah for its precedent-setting character with regard to women's rights to inherit their family's land, should they have no brothers, of course. And this is noteworthy. But there are other aspects. It is noteworthy. At this moment in history, it is. But there are other aspects that I'd like to draw forward that I think are deserving of our attention because they have something to teach us about courage and its effect on the world. Firstly, God is excited by their choice to speak up. What gives God such cause to use an exclamation point, which is not actually in the Torah, but when you read it in the original Hebrew, it seems there should be an exclamation point. Cain, that's what God says. That answer of why God responds so surely and enthusiastically seems to me to be implanted in the text and goes far beyond breaking barriers of gender and status. It has to do with the kind of courage it takes to stand up the way they did, the kind of courage that leads to self-actualization. If we really examine the way the text is phrased, we will notice that the scene is extremely public, extremely public. They approach Moses, the priest, the chieftains, the whole assembly. All of those are listed in succession. The literary effect of each of these added components is to emphasize how exposed they were. These women were opening themselves up to public scrutiny with no assurances that, though being seen by everyone, they would actually be heard by anyone. As my lawyer husband pointed out to me, they had no standing to present this petition. They had no assurance that they would be listened to, and that they took the chance in front of everyone to try anyway. Taking these kinds of chances are moments that make us. They're moments that build us as people, whether it's becoming Bar Bat Mitzvah, London's did, and so many others, whether it is standing up in front of hundreds of people sometimes, or speaking up in a classroom, whether you're a child or an adult, a class where we feel intellectually challenged and possibly even inferior, or approaching a boss or a supervisor of some kind to ask for something we feel we deserve, we stand up and say, "Here I am," in full awareness of the possibility that the world will shut us out. That's when we become more of ourselves. And this is what they did in full view of potential detractors. True courage is, I believe, what inspired God to say, "Cain, this is good and worthy." Another remarkable element of these women's courageous stance is the effect that the Midrash tells us it had on Moses himself, who heard their petition. From the moment that the people first truly lose their faith in God toward the beginning of this book of the Torah, until this moment when the daughters of Zelophehad ask for this, God's voice, the text says, sounds different to Moses. The Midrash points out that the word vayidaber, which is the word for God speaking with divine words directly to Moses, face to face, that word is not used from the beginning of the book of Numbers when the people lose faith and are condemned to wander until now. But after these women present themselves before Moses, the divine words return to him. It is as if Moses loses faith in people when his people lose faith in God. And the courage of these daughters of Zelophehad to inspire him anew is truly remarkable. This act of courage and self-awareness reminds him of his mission, his capacity to act the same, and he can find God in the world again after their petition. If we reflect on our lives, we know that when people stand up to unknown and challenging forces, it inspires us too. Whether it's the Grizzlies or a public servant, standing up without being sure how it's all going to end is stirring, nonetheless, stirring to witness. And one last element of this story, the fact that these women do, in fact, change the world. They do, in fact, change the Torah. The Midrash says that they, in fact, wrote this part of the Torah. They authored it themselves. Their choice to stand up merited an edit in the Torah. Their life affected the text and challenged and changed history for all of us. How magnificent to think that our standing up, whether before a challenging figure in our personal lives or before the United States Supreme Court, can alter history for everyone. But it can, and it does, every day. Our prophetic reading this week, the beginning of the book of Jeremiah, says the following. It says, "The word of the Lord came to me." God said, "Before I created you in the womb, I selected you. Before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet concerning the nations." I, Jeremiah, replied, "God, I do not know how to speak, for I am still but a child." And the Lord said to me, "Do not say I am still a child, but go wherever I send you, and speak whatever I command you. Have no fear of them, for I am with you to deliver you." This is a calling to us as well. Speak, the text says. Say what you must. Stand up and be seen. And while there's no guarantee that they will hear you, God will hear you. Have no fear of them, God says to Jeremiah and to us, for I am with you to deliver you. Be yourself is the charge of this week's Torah portion and Haftorah portion. Be who you are and say it loud. And when we can do this, God will answer Cain, yes, this is good. Shabbat shalom.